Chapter 1, The Cold War Era. So, the given chapter starts with a brief description of Cuban Missile Crisis. Cuba is a small island nation near the coast of United States. Cuba was a communist ruled nation and hence it was a close ally of USSR, that is Union of Soviet Socialist Republic. It also received both diplomatic as well as financial aid from USSR. Now, in April 1961, fear prevailed among the USSR leaders that USA would invade Cuba. So, as a result, Nikita Khrushchev, leader of USSR, placed nuclear missiles in Cuba in order to convert Cuba into a Russian base. Now, 3 weeks after, Americans became aware of this catastrophic installation as it threatened many cities of American mainland. So, US President at that point of time, John F. Kennedy, um, John F. Kennedy was reluctant to do anything that might lead to war, that might lead full-scale war between two countries, and he was determined to get Khrushchev to remove missiles from Cuba. So John F. Kennedy ordered American warships to stop any Soviet ships which was heading towards Cuba. Now, this clash, which seemed imminent, that is about to happen, and it came to be known as Cuban Missile Crisis. This possible war made the entire world nervous. Eventually, both sides decided to avoid war. Soviet ships slowed down and turned back. Cuban Missile Crisis was a high point of what came to be known as Cold War. Cold War basically refers to the competition, the tension, and the confrontation between the two superpowers, that is USA and USSR, backed by the respective allies. However, this Cold War never converted or escalated into hot war. Hot war is full war between two powers. Besides, there were many wars in various regions, the allies involved in warfare, but at least world avoided another global war. Cold War was not only a matter of power rivalries or military alliances, these were accompanied by real ideological conflicts, that is, difference over the best and most appropriate way of organizing political, economical, and social life all over the world. Basically, there were two alliances: Western Alliance, which was headed by USA, and it represented ideology of liberal democracy and capitalism. Capitalism basically refers to private ownership of resources, whereas Eastern Alliance, it was headed by USSR and it supported the ideology of socialism and communalism, that is public ownership of resources. Now, what is Cold War? Cold War referred to the competition, the tension, and series of confrontation between USA and USSR backed by the respective allies. End of Second World War was also the beginning of Cold War. Now in 1945, Allied forces, which were led by USA, Soviet Union, Britain, and France, they defeated Axis forces led by Germany, Japan, and Italy. So this ended the World War II, which started in 1939 and it was ended in 1945. Now the war spread out in other regions outside Europe, including Southeast Asia, China, Myanmar, and part of India's northeast. It also led to great loss of human lives and civilian property. Now, end of World War II was also the beginning of Cold War. The World War II ended when US dropped two atomic bombs on Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in August 1945, causing Japan to surrender. Now, see, the critics of US decision to drop the bomb argued that it was unnecessary to drop bomb as US already knew that Japan was about to surrender. Instead, US action was intended to stop USSR to make political and military gains in Asia and show Moscow that USA was supreme. US supporters argued that dropping of atomic bomb was necessary to end the war quickly and to further stop loss of American and Allied lives. Now, the consequences of end of World War II was rise of two power fronts on the global stage, that is USA and USSR. They were rivals to each other, and this was a main one reason for the Cold War. Besides this, Cold War was also rooted in the understanding that destruction caused by usage of atom bombs is too costly for any country to bear. Also, no political gain will justify the destruction of their societies. Hence, Cold War is basically based on logic of deterrence. Logic of deterrence says that both sides have the capacity to retaliate against an attack and to cause so much destruction that neither can afford to limit the warfare. Deterrence relationship prevents war but not rivalry between power. Now, the next topic is the emergence of two power blocks. Now, the world was sharply divided into two alliances system. The state was supposed to remain one a particular state was supposed to remain tied with one protective superpower to limit the influence of other superpower and its allies on it. Small states also got the promise of protection, weapon, and economic aid against their local rivals. Hence, this ally system threatened to divide the entire world into two camps. So, countries of Western Europe were the part of Western Alliance, which was headed by USA, and countries of Eastern Europe were the part of Eastern Alliance, which was headed by USSR. Western Alliance was organized into NATO. NATO stands for North Atlantic Treaty Organization. It was an association of 12 states. NATO declares that armed attack against any one of them in Europe or North America would be regarded as attack on all of them. So each state would be obliged to help the other. Whereas the Eastern Alliance, it is also known as Warsaw Pact, it was led by USSR and it was created in 1955. The principal function of Warsaw Pact was to counter NATO's forces in Europe. Europe became main arena of conflict between superpowers. Superpowers sometimes used military power to bring countries into their alliance. For instance, USSR used its influence in Eastern Europe to ensure that eastern half of Europe remained within its sphere of influence. Now coming on to Asia. In Asia, Southeast Asia, East Asia, Western Asia, and Middle East Asia, USA built alliance system known as CATO and CENTO. CATO stands for Southeast Asian Treaty Organization, whereas CENTO stands for Central Treaty Organization. So, USSR and Communist China responded by having close relation with Asian countries like North Vietnam, North Korea, and Iraq. The small states were helpful for the allies as they provided vital resources, territories from where they could spy on each other, locations where they could launch their weapons and troops, and it also provided them economic support. And it was also important for ideological purposes. Arenas of Cold War. So Cold War also led to several shooting wars. However, these wars did not lead to another Cold War. Two superpowers were poised for direct confrontation in Korea 1950 to 53, Berlin 1958 to 62, and Congo in early 1960s. In many cases, diplomatic communication between the superpower could not be sustained and contributed to misunderstandings. Cold War was basically led by mutual suspicions between the two powers. Uh, but however, the two powers understood that war might occur in spite of restraint. Now, finally, USA and USSR decided to collaborate in limiting or eliminating certain kind of nuclear and non-nuclear weapons. Superpowers held several rounds of arm limitation talks and signed several treaties to limit their arms. Now, from 1960s, three significant treaties were signed within one decade. These were Limited Test Ban Treaty, Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, and Anti-Ballistic Treaty. Now, the next important topic is NAM. NAM stands for Non-Alignment Movement. Now, there were many countries in Asia and Africa which were worried that they would lose their further freedom if they joined these alliances. So, development of NAM gave newly independent countries a way of staying out of these alliances. Basically, five founder figures of NAM are Joseph Broz Tito, who was the president of Yugoslavia, Jawaharlal Nehru, first Prime Minister of India, Jamal Abdul Nasser, ruler of Egypt, Sukarno, first president of Indonesia, and Kwame Nkrumah, first Prime Minister of Ghana. So the first non-alignment movement summit was held in Belgrade 1961. So basically, it was held on three factors for discussion of three factors. These were cooperation among these five founder nations, then growing Cold War tension and its widening arenas, dramatic entry of many newly decolonized African countries into international arena. Um, First summit was attended by 25 members, but later on NAM grew and became a popular international organization, and countries of various political system and interests joined it, and hence NAM became less homogeneous. Now there were several discussions about the nature of NAM. So, first, NAM is not isolation. That is, isolation means remain aloof from world affairs. NAM played an active role in mediating between two rival alliances in cause of peace and stability. NAM is also not neutrality. Neutrality refers to policy of staying out of war. NAM states involved in war for various reasons. They also work to prevent war between each other. Next is new economic order, new international economic order. So now the challenge for most of the non-aligned countries were that they were least developed countries and they needed to be developed economically and lift their people out of poverty. Economic development was also vital for their independence from for new countries. So idea of neo originated from this realization. So United Nations Conference on Trade and Development brought a report in 1972 known as Towards a New Trade Policy for Development. So this report proposed a reform of global trading system so as to give LDCs control over the natural resources exploited by developed nations and to obtain access to Western markets and to reduce the cost of technology to provide LDCs with greater role in international economic institution. Gradually, nature of NAM changed to give greater importance to economic issue. For instance, the first summit, which was held in 1961 Belgrade, no importance to economic issues were given. But by mid 1970s, NAM became an important economic pressure group. By late 1980s, Neo initiative faded due to stiff opposition from developed countries who acted as united, while NAM countries struggled to stay united. Last topic is India and Cold War. As a leader of NAM, India's response to Cold War was twofold. First, it took care in staying away from alliances. Second, it raised its voice against newly decolonized country joining the alliances. India's policy was neither negative nor passive. For example, Nehru remained in the world and reminded the world that NAM was not policy of fleeing away. On the contrary, India was in favor of actively intervening in world affairs to soften Cold War rivalries. Besides, Indian diplomats were used to communicate and mediate between Cold War rivals such as in Korea War in 1950s. During the Cold War, India repeatedly tried to activate those regional and international organizations which were not part of any alliance. NAM was also a noble international cause which had little to do with India's real interest, but it also served India's interest in two ways. Firstly, NAM allowed India to take international decisions, and secondly, India was often able to balance one superpower against the other. For example, if it felt under pressure by one power, it could tilt towards the other. Now, India's policy of non alignment was criticized on following grounds. First, India's non alignment was said to be unprincipled. In order to pursue national interests, it often refused to take firm stand on international issues. Secondly, India was inconsistent and took contradictory postures. India signed Treaty of Friendship with USSR in August 1971 for 20 years. Outsiders viewed it as virtually joining Eastern Alliance. Indian government view was that India needed diplomatic and military support during Bangladesh crisis. Also, the treaty did not stop India from having good relations with other countries like USA. Besides this, NAM contained some core ideas like it was based on recognition that decolonized states share a historical affiliation and can become a powerful force if they come together. It also based on democratized international system to reduce existing equality. So this was all about the first chapter. Thank you.